Okay, here we go, guys. This is chapter 2, part 3. We're starting with energy. We've already gone over the shapes of the atoms and what the protons and neutrons, electrons are, and how they connect with ionic bonding or covalent bonding, and different kind of chemistry of that. And we talked about pH, the potential of hydrogen to do something, become either acidic or alkaline. And now we're going to talk about energy because this is important in chemistry. The body runs on energy. And remember, we're talking about C6H12O6, which is glucose, and how your body uses that with some oxygen and some water and stuff like that to make CO2 and H2O and energy. So energy is the ability to perform work. I don't feel like I have much energy, I can't do much work. So the body depends on tons of energy to do many, many things. And we're not talking just getting up and doing the dishes. We're talking about breathing. We're talking about metabolizing, which means usually breaking down or building up things. We're breaking down chemicals and we're making them into other chemicals inside our body. Okay. Okay, that's exactly what we said. Now there's 5 different kinds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, there's 6 different kinds of energy. What? I thought there was only 5. They said. All right, well, fine. There's 6 different kinds of energy. We don't really use too much nuclear energy, but we do use mechanical energy. So this is we're stepping into physics land from chemistry land, but it's all the same building. Energy that causes movement, mechanical energy, potential energy and kinetic energy. You can talk about those later. The movement of the legs and running, oh, that's pretty basic, right? Chemical stored in energy bonds. When you break apart them, you get some energy release. Now that's going to also connect to nuclear eventually. Fuel to do work. That is not a good example. So the fuel is taking glucose and breaking it down into the energy that we need. Okay. Electrical energy is the energy released from the movement of charged particles. What are charged particles? Those are ions. Remember? Okay. So your nerves work chemically and electrically. So there is a little electric charge. If you've ever stuck on a fork or something, I don't know why you would, or you're playing around with electricity and you get zapped and it kind of like makes you hold on to it and you can't let go. That's because it's just catching on and electrically stimulating those muscles to contract. Okay, so we work on that a little bit. Radiant energy occurs in waves. Okay, that's going to be like light is wave, or sometimes it's a particle, depending on how you look at it. So ultraviolet radiation from the sun, if it gets to your skin, it creates vitamin D, okay, but it also causes tanning, and we'll talk about that when we get to integumentary system. So see how that adds up? This connects with the whole system of the skin. Now we'll talk about things like melanin and melatonin. And melanin is the coloring of your skin. So if you're really dark skinned, that means you have a really good block against ultraviolet rays. If you're very light, then you have less block of ultraviolet rays, and there's reasons for that, and I go over that in that chapter. Okay, thermal radiation, energy transfer because of temperature difference. Yeah, your body temperature, but also your radiant heat. Right, you can radiate that heat off too. Right, travels in waves. You can also conduct that heat or convection, all kinds of different things. Now, nuclear energy is released during the decay of radioactives, not useful in physiology. If you have if you have radioactive stuff going on in you, you can die. So we don't want that, okay? The forms of energy, which we just talked about, we don't have to worry about it. Energy is converted from one form to another. When a log burns, chemical energy is stored and is converted to heat energy. Okay, and radiant energy, right? Because light. Okay, that's a conversion. So energy does change over from one way to another, but it takes a process. Okay, and usually it takes some kind of catalysts, right? Fire. Energy transfer, the role of adenosine triphosphate. So adenosine triphosphate, also called ATP, you're going to see that a lot. Now it's part of what's called the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle occurs in the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. Energy used to power the body comes from the food we eat. Okay, most of the food you eat, right? Okay, so most of your body is trying to do is take the food that you eat and break it down into some basic things. It wants to have some lipids to make fats. And by making fats, it's going to do things like make cushioning for your body. It's going to make conductors for your body. It's going to make nerves for your body, stuff like that. It's going to make some of the oils, some of the hormones, and some other things like that. Neurotransmitters too. And it's going to take proteins, it's going to break those down into amino acids. And amino acids are what make up other proteins, which would be like the enzymes that we have to make. And also structures like muscle structure and skin structure and nails and things like that. And then the other one is we're going to take starches or carbohydrates, and we're going to try to break those down into more sugars so that we can use those in our process of making so much energy because we need so much. Okay. ATP is composed of 3 parts: a base, okay, which is the phosphate, a sugar, or let's say the base adenosine triphosphate. Okay, there we go. Know the phosphate groups and the ATP and new chemical bonds. Okay, they're not telling us anything on that. Emergency energy stored. So energy is basically stored as you're holding on to that ATP. If you break off one of those phosphates, you get a little pop of electricity, basically energy. So here we go. ATP equals energy plus ADP plus P. Okay. This is ADP, adenosine triphosphate. Tri means 3, and di means 2. So adenosine triphosphate breaks down into energy. That's your cool byproduct. And then you end up with like leftover ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and then an extra phosphate group. Okay. Okay, there we go. That's it. Wow. That's all they're going to tell us on that. So here's what happens with that whole thing. When you eat a sugar, or you break stuff down into sugars, that's the glucose, the C6H12O6. You break it into sugars, it gets into the cell. Remember the cell when we talked about like the cytoplasm? It goes in through there and it hangs out, and it's going to go through a thing called the pyruvate cycle. It's going to make a couple ATPs. Those ATPs are going to be used in the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, to make lots and lots, like 34 to 36 ATPs by the time it's done. You're going to make a lot of water in that process. You're going to make a lot of heat in that process, and you're going to make a lot of did I say ATP, ADP, and ATP, and all that kind of jazz. So you're going to make tons of the CO2. That's what it was. And you're going to have to get rid of CO2 and get rid of the excess water and use up the energy. So that's what we're going to have to do with those. Now, that was a lot less in-depth than most other books go, which, oh, thank your lucky whatever angels or something, man, because it can be a real pain. So here we go. Mixtures, solutions, suspensions, and precipitates. So there you go. Here we have our sandwich is a good example because a sandwich has like all the stuff that you would really need. It has the carbohydrates, which would be the bread. That has sugars, breaks down in the bread, broken down by amylase in the saliva. Then it's swallowed down as you chewed it up, mechanically digesting it into the stomach, where you have proteins like the ham, it looks like, or bologna or whatever the heck it is. And then you have things like cheese, which has the fats, right? And you can break all those things down and you get running energy right there, apparently. What does this say? Is it going to say anything? I don't want to click that. Here's your ATP molecule, okay, 3 phosphates. When you break it off, you end up with a little snap of energy. Oh, a little ATP, he got away. Good thing he didn't die. Mixtures. Mixtures are combinations of 2 or more substances that can be separated by ordinary physical means. When separated, the substances maintain their original properties. Sugar and bits of iron is what they're using. I don't know why you'd use that. So maybe we're talking like if you mixed tomatoes and cucumbers. If you're making a salad, tomatoes and cucumbers, you can take them apart later and you still end up with just tomatoes and just cucumbers. Or you put them together and make a tomato cucumber salad, right? I guess I'm hungry. Okay. Solutions are mixtures. In a solution, the particles are mixed together and remain evenly distributed. So now you're going to take that dye or sugar and you pour it in water and you're going to shake it up with the catalyst of shaking, and you're going to mix them up, and you can't separate them again easily. Okay. And a suspension are mixtures. In a suspension, particles are relatively large and tend to settle to the bottom unless the mixture is shaken continuously. For example, sand and water are shaken, so a suspension is suspended in the solution. So you have a solution, which is water. If you've had to have the boba drinks or whatever, or you've had like chia seeds, right? You put chia seeds in here and they gel up, and then they end up all like completely evenly distributed in that drink, and that's a suspension. Okay. Now precipitate, you do this usually in chemistry. Reaction is the formation of a solid in a solution during a chemical reaction. The formation of the precipitates has several clinical consequences. For kidney stones are precipitates of salts. Okay, drink plenty of fluids, yada, yada, yada. Okay, cholesterol. So precipitates are when the chemical reactions occur that make things basically solidify if they're not mixed up enough. So that's going to be into your kidney stones. You don't drink enough water, you drink a lot of sodas, and you're drinking a lot of heavy foods and bad stuff and whatnot like that, you're going to end up with precipitates of calcium or magnesium or whatever the salts are, and those are going to start to collect and hold on to each other and they precipitate together. Okay. Now there we go. So summary of the whole outline. So here's hint, hint, guys. If you want to go through the entire thing and you don't understand something, run through this stuff first. Go through the online summary. Here it is, summary outline. Okay. This tells you everything in the entire chapter that we just went over in like one or two little tiny sentences, right? Like, look at this, right? So there we go. Now you can go through the quizzes on through here, and I want you to just do your quiz, which will help you a lot, and then do the discussion boards. Remember, discussion boards are going to be like the whole idea of a discussion board, by the way, is to keep you interacting with me and with each other like we would in a classroom. Now, in a classroom, I probably wouldn't use the same examples unless we really had to or they were really applied to the class. But imagine if we did. So remember we were talking about Mr. Shepherd back in the first chapter. That one was about him maintaining his homeostasis. Other ones are about different concepts in there. They're talking about like how things work, and sometimes there's diagnostic stuff, and that's to hopefully get you researching a little bit more and kind of encourage that ability of yourself to find where you want to go in your future and all that kind of stuff. So don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that already, especially if you're part of that Fortis class and you're looking at these things. And this was part 3 of chapter 2, which ended the whole chapter, and that wasn't too bad. So we'll talk to you guys on the flip side, and I'm going to post these probably tonight. It'd be good for the review of the final and the midterm and stuff like that. I'm sorry it takes so long. These are like, 20, 30 minutes at a time, but I'm trying to go through them as fast as I can. Okay? Trying to get as much information into that brain of yours as possible. Talk to you later. Bye.